Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to show you how to grow bush beans, otherwise known as dwarf beans. This is how they look. You've probably seen them in the shops quite often. Now dwarf beans, often called French dwarf beans in the UK, they're really good if you want to grow something fast in a small location. So I'm going to be showing you how to grow this on a windowsill as if you were growing it inside a house or a flat, and you can provide yourself with a crop of beans within about 2 months. And then you can up to 4 months, 5 months time, you should still have some crops coming as well. So dwarf beans, they are very easy to grow, really good for indoors because the climate that they like is very similar to a house environment, around 25 degrees, 20 degrees, something like that. I'll put the temperature in Fahrenheit as well so you can see that. And so it does quite well in the household environment. So in this first part of the video, I'm just going to show you what kind of pot and compost you need and how to plant it up. Luckily the dwarf beans aren't too fussy when it comes to growing. So I would just recommend going multi-purpose compost. If you do have any access to soil, you could also add just a little bit of soil into that. The reason for that is the bean forms a relationship with bacteria on its roots, and it allows it to extract nitrogen from the air and feed itself. And if it's a sterilized compost from a multi-purpose pack, it's not likely to have that bacteria in it. But it's not a big issue, but it just means you'll have to feed it a little bit more than if it didn't have that bacteria. So adding a little bit of topsoil to it helps with that. So you can start with the relationship with the roots from an early stage and start making its own nitrogen. But if you don't have any topsoil, that's perfectly fine. You just need to add a little bit more nitrogen when feeding it in a household environment. So you just get some normal multi-purpose compost. What I've done here, this is just normal. This is compost from my garden, and we just put a little bit of soil in there as well. It should have plenty of the bacteria to start off with the nitrogen fixing. So I'd probably recommend going with a 2 litre size pot. That's quite a good size. Bush beans are quite small plants, they don't grow huge. It's not like the climbing beans. If you have French beans or runner beans, they grow really tall, up to 2 or 3 meters high. These won't grow much more than a foot in height. They don't need a lot of space. And if you're growing them on a windowsill, you don't want a huge pot because it will take up too much room. So a 2 litre size pot is a good one to go for. You can go up to 4 litre if you want, but you don't get a huge advantage and you're going to be taking up a lot of space on your windowsill. So I'm going to keep it on quite a small pot for this, just to show you, so you know at home you can keep a nice compact space. So one of the aspects that makes beans so easy to grow is their size. You can see they're actually, compared with most plant seeds, they're actually really large, so you can easily handle them, very easy to plant. Some plant seeds are like dust and they're very hard to pick out and sow. Also, being a big seed, it means it grows really fast initially. A lot of the vegetable seeds, they're very small. Something like a lettuce plant or a carrot plant, the seeds are tiny, they don't have much energy inside them, and so when they first initially grow up, they're tiny little plants, and because the plants are so small, it takes them a while to get going. But dwarf beans, because the seeds are so large, they'll come up really quick. You'll get a large plant, probably about 3 or 4 inches high, 5-10 centimeters, and that will give you a plant quite quickly. They'll then keep maturing from then on, and within a month or 2 you should be able to get your first crop of beans. So I'm just going to plant these now. As you see, the beans will come in different colours. Some of them might be black, speckled, depends on the variety you've got. Some of them are white as well. These ones just happen to be kind of a speckled colour. So to plant the beans, it couldn't be more simple than just pushing them into the soil. Now, I would probably recommend putting 2 bean plants per pot. The reason being, you don't have a 100% chance that this bean's going to grow. If one bean doesn't germinate, at least the other one will germinate. 2 plants in the pot of this size might be a little bit cramped, so you might want to take one out if both of them have germinated. But all you need to do is place it in the soil and simply push it in. And when it comes to the orientation of the bean, it doesn't matter too much which way up it is, but obviously it's easier to put it in if you put it in vertical, because it's easier to push it in. You just put it in the top, push down with your finger, down to about, I would say about 2 centimeters or a bit over half an inch or almost an inch, and that's all you need to do. Water this well, put it in a nice warm location. It doesn't need to be anywhere sunny, but you will need sunshine as soon as it comes above the soil surface, so I would recommend putting it on a sunny south facing windowsill. You want to have plenty of sunshine so it's nice and warm. As I say, you don't have to have it in the sun, but it will germinate better if it's in a warmer location. Keep it moist. Once you give it the initial water, you probably don't need to give it a second watering because it will germinate so quickly, it probably won't dry out in that time. But just keep an eye on it and make sure it doesn't dry out completely. These beans should germinate in about a week's time, sometimes quicker, sometimes slower. Up to 2 weeks is the maximum. If you don't have any beans coming up after 2 weeks, I would recommend trying again. Maybe you had a dud bean that didn't germinate properly or the temperature wasn't quite right. When it comes to the temperature, About 20 degrees is perfect, so room temperature. A bit warmer and they'll probably germinate slightly faster, so 25-30 you'll probably get faster germination than if they're at a cooler stage. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a time lapse now of germination of a seed I did previously, which is from a runner bean, but it's very similar germination pattern to this, so you can see how the roots come out and the shoot. And I'll see if I can try and get a time lapse of this coming above the soil as well, let you see what it looks like, and then I'll meet you in the next section of the video where I'll be showing you the plant and showing you how best to look after it, what to look for when the beans are coming. So it's now been about 3 weeks or so, and you can see the plants have got to a good size. Once they get growing, they do grow quite quickly. You can probably see from that time lapse, the leaves are quite small when they start off, but they keep inflating, getting bigger and bigger, and the first few leaves are really quite large. Now, if you're using your own soil to help with the nitrogen fixing bacteria, you will find, of course, you'll get some weeds coming up. It's very easy to identify which is a weed and what's not with dwarf beans, because dwarf beans are so big and vigorous that it's very easy to tell, because all the other weed seeds should be quite small. So as the weeds come up, you want to be taking them out. You can see there's a few small ones here, but I can just easily pick them out and deal with them. So you want to keep the weeds away, because what they will do is they'll compete with these beans for water and nutrients, and you're going to have a weaker plant because of that. So I'm just going to pick them out, make sure there's none there. Another thing to notice with the beans is they've got this characteristic large leaf when they first come up. These are the original seed leaves, the first primary leaves that come up. And these are quite obvious what are beans and what are the weeds, so you should be able to tell from that. From now on, all the leaves will be different. They'll all have this kind of 3 pointy leaves instead. That's your adult leaf that comes from the beans. These are the first leaves that come up, and don't worry if these turn yellow later in the year and fall off. These don't last that long. This is the original first seed leaves, but these ones will be the ones that take over as time goes on. You'll also notice that with this type of bean, the bean actually comes out the ground with it, and it has the 2 little beans at the side here. It's also normal that these will shrivel up and fall off eventually. You can just leave them on the compost or throw them away if you're worried they might go mouldy. And basically what happens is, as the nutrients and the energy gets taken out of the bean, the plant absorbs that energy, and then it just drops the beans once the beans have nothing left in them. And that just gets the plant going to begin with. Once the plant's got its own leaves, it doesn't need the energy from the beans anymore, and it'll just keep growing away by itself. So in this pot we've got 2 plants, and this is a bit too many for a pot of this size. So whenever you've got too many plants in a pot, what you want to do is just get a pair of scissors, and you just want to cut off the weakest one. And with doing that, this one's going to have more space, more nutrients and more water for itself to grow. If you cut them off right at the ground level, the other ones shouldn't grow back. You'll just be left with this one, and this one will just do much better because of that. And you want to choose the strongest plant as well. There's no point growing a weak plant, because you're just going to get smaller yields. So I'm going to leave this on a nice warm sunny windowsill now. This will be the end of this video. I'm going to do an update video though once this starts fruiting, just to show some harvesting. Beans, dwarf beans are really good because they're self-pollinating. So you don't need more than one plant. If you only have space for one plant, that's fine. They'll still pollinate, and you'll still get a crop of beans. With some plants, you do need other plants to help them pollinate, but with beans, they're quite good. They self-pollinate, so you won't need to worry about having more than one plant. But of course, if you want more beans, just have more than one plant. Now, when it comes to looking after it, once it's started to grow, you want to start feeding it soon. You want to give it a tomato feed. You don't need anything high in nitrogen, because it should fix its own nitrogen. If you're growing it in compost or soil that's not had beans in it in the past, and it doesn't have the nitrogen fixing bacteria in the roots yet, you can give it a multi-purpose, just general feed, a balanced feed that has nitrogen in it as well. And you can just feed it with that until it starts to flower. But if you've got soil that's had nitrogen fixing bacteria in the past, then you can just go straight onto tomato feed. It should be able to make its own nitrogen, no problem at all. It normally takes about 3 or 4 weeks for the nitrogen fixating bacteria to start working on it. But during that time, it's normally getting enough nitrogen from the bean that was attached to the stem, so you don't need to worry too much about the nitrogen on that. And also there should be some anyway in the compost in small amounts. So they're quite hungry feeders. Make sure they're well fed. Really warm, sunny location. They like warm weather. If you're living somewhere that has really hot summers though, I would avoid midday sun, as that could scorch the leaves. If you notice any scorching, such as leaves going a bit yellow on the top or dead patches, put it somewhere that's avoiding the midday sun. But otherwise, give it plenty of sun, keep it well watered. You don't want the compost to dry out. And put it in a sunny location, and you should get some really good strong growth. Now if it does get too tall and it starts looking leggy, you can just pinch out the top shoots. That will encourage it to bush a bit more. But if you've got a dwarf variety, it should naturally start branching and bushing out anyway. But if it doesn't, then you can keep pinching out the top shoots. That will encourage more size shoots, and you get a bushier plant in general. So this one at the moment isn't looking too bad, but I'll probably be pinching the top of this out in probably a week or two. That will encourage side shoots from the side down here. There's also side shoots that will come out from here, and you'll get a much nicer, bushier plant. So that's all for this video, and I'll give you guys an update in probably about a month or two's time when this is much larger and I'm getting my first beans.